Hello, welcome to a special live edition of the Rangers Review podcast. We are in Dunfermline at the MPH new showroom here, family-run business, all trade specialists. Do come check out if you're close to the area. We're going to be talking about a big game that's to come up this weekend, Jonny McFarlane and Chris Jack. So we thought we'd get together to do it, but thank you very much to MPH for hosting us. It is the Old Firm game this Sunday, the first of the season. Now, we should say that we're speaking on Thursday, so we don't know exactly what's going to have happened between now and then. Hopefully a couple of new players for Rangers, but we're going to look ahead to the game, try and dissect how Rangers can win it, whether they can get a significant result in this fixture that they've not in a while. So Chris, I'll come to you first. Your overall thoughts about maybe how optimistic Philippe Clement and Rangers supporters will be as Rangers travel across the city this weekend for the first Old Firm game of the season.
I thought you were going to start with an easy one and ask me for a score prediction there. You're saving that one for the end. It's not been a great start to the season, I think we have to say that. We are slightly more encouraging signs over the last couple of weeks, but you look at where the squad is, I think that's reflective of the mood of the fans at present. I don't think there are many people tuning in on Sunday expecting Rangers to go and do anything, but in terms of the title race, it's almost even at this very early stage. You look at it almost being a must not lose a couple of points dropped at Tynecastle opening week, falling 5 behind potentially at this stage. Yes, there's plenty of football to be played, a lot of ground can still be made up, but I think that would not do a lot for the mood of the Rangers fans if it was to go badly on Sunday.
Jonny, Chris paints a very optimistic picture, and you've had a good start to the day because you've already found a cabinet in the MPH showroom that you like.
I fancy it, yeah. It's one of these open up bars. It's nice.
Excellent. Your overall thoughts, because these games, they're always big, and especially at the start of the season. Rangers haven't won an Old Firm in the start of the season for what feels like forever. I think you're going back to the COVID season when they last won the league title. There is obviously the potential to go and get what would be a significant result if they can do it, but it does feel like the chances are very slim. Can that, being the underdog to this degree, work in Rangers' favour? How big do you think that gap is at the start of the season?
There's a gap. There's a reasonable gap, and a lot will depend obviously on what happens over the next period of time in terms of the transfer window, in terms of bridging that gap. But I think what we can say is, based on the start to the season, we were looking at it in the pre-season and going, what's happening? Mm-hmm. What is the plan? And I think, as Chris alluded to, over the last 2 or 3 games, you've started to see much more this idea of Clement's vision coming to the fore. And one thing Rangers have now, with Czerny on the right, Matondo on the left, perhaps other options will arrive there. They have real pace and creativity in the wide areas, and the ability to hit Celtic in transition on both flanks. And that's something that Rangers have lacked for a long time. So, like everyone else, I look at the game and you think Celtic are absolutely the favourites. They're at Celtic Park, they're on the crest of a wave, they're playing great football at the moment. But Rangers, I think in transition, have always lacked that penetration. And I think they've now got more options to have that. And I think if they're set up correctly, and if we continue to see this really aggressive style that Clement's implemented in the last period, then they have more of a chance than maybe some people are giving them credit for, because I can see how they can damage Celtic. And that's not always been the case in the last season or so.
No, we're going to get into that. Key players, what went wrong for Rangers under Clement last season in this fixture, what the tactical battles might look like. Let's start with the overall picture, Chris, and I'm going to come back to you for the optimistic take. Rangers' last, what I would call significant Old Firm win in the league was when Steven Gerrard had COVID and Philip Hollander was still playing for Rangers, and that in and of itself tells you how long ago it was. Now, they won an Old Firm game in the Scottish Cup semi-final, didn't they, at Hampden in extra time. They won an Old Firm game under Michael Beale, but by that point the league was over, and I don't know about you, but that decreases the significance because nothing was riding on that game. So there is a lot there's a big narrative to change, and the game that kind of comes to my mind in regards to that, Chris, is when Gerrard took Rangers to Parkhead in 2019, 1-1. Obviously, they wouldn't win the league that season, and the wheels kind of came off soon after. Rangers were probably in a better place then than they are now. They were further along in a project. What do you think, if I put it to you generally over the last 3 years, is going wrong for Rangers in this fixture? Because if you take it back to when Gerrard was still in charge, Rangers were it was almost a complete opposite story, wasn't it? They were doing really well in this fixture, but they just haven't been able to get over the line. How much of that is a mental thing before we go into the talking about players and lineups and tactics? Because to go and win an Old Firm game, I presume you have to believe you're going to go and win an Old Firm game, and certainly if over the last few seasons, it's not always felt that Rangers have went into this fixture with that belief, really.
I think that mental side of it can't be overlooked. You think almost, you mentioned the Gerrard era there, you almost go back to before that, the Rangers had a number of sore ones in the Old Firm under different managers, obviously. Gerrard came in and gave the squad, gave the club, gave the support such a boost. It puffed everybody's chest up. Even in that first Old Firm game that season, Rangers didn't win it, and it took until the Ryan Jack goal at Ibrox. That felt like a big moment for a new squad, because they then knew Celtic were beatable, whereas in previous seasons you were going in and the games were finishing 5s, and towards the end of Kashinya and Murty, it almost felt that Rangers knew they were going to lose 2, 3, 4, 5. Gerrard came in, changed that mentality. As I say, didn't win the first one, but as soon as that Ryan Jack game happened, even then going to Parkhead after that, Rangers thought Celtic are beatable. We are more than good enough. We have a manager, we have a tactical plan, we have the quality of player, and we also have that mentality. We have that belief that Celtic can be beaten. Over the last couple of seasons, I think that fear factor, if you like, for some players perhaps has come back in. The squad has obviously changed again. The manager mentioned that, I think it was last week, about some of the new players that will go into their first Old Firm game. Some players never been to Parkhead before. For the ones that have, James Tavernier also has a lot of scar tissue in this fixture. Even some of the relatively newer ones, like Jack Butland, the guys that came in last summer, they do need, I think, a win over Celtic just to almost clear that hurdle, almost get that monkey off their back.
Because there's an inferiority complex at the moment, I think, in this fixture, Jonny. Is that fair? I mean, you're a man, you love to say that you need to win the battle. That's one of your catchphrases.
Well, it's just it's the basics, isn't it? And I think sometimes, while I'm a great believer in tactical analysis and in-depth looks at Scottish football, I sometimes think we can overcomplicate it. We have got a certain style in Scotland. There's a rudimentary nature to a lot of the games. We have the weather that we have the pitches that we have, and sometimes you just have to get up and at them in Scotland. It's just it's a truism, and it's been the case for my lifetime, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. In terms of the mental scar tissue and all that, I think that's kind of a little bit overplayed. I kind of disagree with Chris on that. I do think there are issues around James Tavernier, no doubt. For me, Maida's got under his skin a little bit. Yeah. And it's going to be a huge game for him in terms of how he deals with Maida. And I want to see him, from a Rangers point of view, approaching this game, using all of his experience and being aware of the threat that Maida poses, and maybe being a little bit more defensive-minded in terms of the way he approaches this game, and only looking to get forward when there's a real opportunity to do so and there's someone there that can slot in. We saw Ryan Jack do that for so many years so effectively, and covering James Tavernier and really filling that gap that he leaves when he bombs forward. But for me, the biggest thing over the last few games against Celtic is there's two things. Number one is quality and moments. Actually, when you look back at last season, there's not actually that much between the teams. If you look at the XG, if you look at the chances, Celtic were never really massively dominant across the span of the games. It was decided by a brilliant bit of quality by Kyogo, an Adam Ida great finish or moment where he slammed through a defence. There's that quality that Celtic has told in these fixtures, even when they've been tight, and that's crucial. And what you need from a Rangers point of view is you need big moments from the big players. And listen, this is part of the reason why Rangers fans have been up in arms and demanding a massive rebuild over the course of this summer, is because the big guys, the Todd Cantwells of this world, haven't produced those moments. And the Rangers fans, I think, have rightly felt like it's time for a big change. So you need someone like Czerny, for example, to step up to the plate. But I think the biggest thing for me, and again, this is maybe a little bit more tactical, but I just think it's self-evident with Celtic. You need to stop Callum McGregor. And Rangers have not stopped Callum McGregor. And they've lost the midfield battle. And they've tried to neuter him by putting on a number 10 and saying, look, you try and do your attacking thing, but also you need to sort of deal with Callum McGregor. And Callum McGregor has just dealt with that so easily. You look at Tom Lawrence, couldn't get close to him. Cantwell, I thought, did okay in that role in the cup final, to be fair to Todd Cantwell, but didn't actually maybe do the creative side so effectively. I think you need to almost take the queen, if we're using the chess analogy, off the board. I'd like to see Dujon Sterling literally put on Callum McGregor and say, right, we're going to have this as a 9 outfield players v 9 outfield players, because Sterling and McGregor, basically Sterling's going to man mark him and take him completely out as an option. I think Sterling has the physicality, has the pace, has the defensive nous to do that. And if I see a Philip Clement lineup going into this game on Sunday that has Tom Lawrence in there as the number 10 trying to do Callum McGregor, I think I'll be expecting to look at Twitter and see that Rangers fans everywhere are tearing their hair out, because we've seen that movie before. I think Tom Lawrence is a lot fitter than he was then, but I still didn't see any evidence that he can pull that off.
Seen that movie before is a good way to put it. We'll come on to the midfield battle, but when you're talking there about how much of a gap is there between the teams, I thought there was a few halves last season, so I'm thinking of the 3-3 game in that first half. I thought Celtic could have been 3-0 up, 4-0 up, if not for Jack Butland. But I agree in terms of the small margins. We're talking a bigger picture here, Chris, but Rangers have gone from one style to another, to another. The recruitment policy has changed a lot. If you take it to the cup final, I watched the cup final back 2 days ago. Terrible game. I thought it was a really bad game, and actually neither team were great. The difference for me in that cup final was pretty marginal at the end. Celtic had a fully fit squad, Rangers did not, and one of the reasons they didn't have a fully fit squad is they've changed styles so much. So as we heard from Clement throughout last season, the pre-season that Rangers did maybe wasn't quite suited to the style of playing, the intensity of running, and the man-marking style that Johnny's talking about there. Celtic have a fully fit squad. They bring round pegs into the game in round holes. So you've got Abdallah Sima, who comes on up front for Rangers. He'd only played less than 90 minutes in that position all season. Scott Wright coming in at number 10, who obviously lost the ball in that position in the lead up to the goal. Again, had hardly played in that position. By contrast, Celtic bring Bernardo on in midfield, who's the one who shoots to catalyse the goal for Adamida, who's sharp, who just has that yard that Sima clearly didn't when he was running through on scales in that game. So I agree with you that the margins at points have been small, but it's about quality getting over that line. So Chris, I'll put the midfield question to you, because this is something that has been such a predominant theme of Old Firms over recent years. I agree with Johnny, but I think if you look at what Rangers did tactically in the midfield over the course of last season, if you man mark Callum McGregor, that's all fine and well, but if you then give the Celtic centre-backs time to time on the ball, what you often saw them do last season was they just found a pass to Hatate or O'Reilly. O'Reilly's obviously no longer there. Callum McGregor runs off the back of his man, and he's the third man effectively, but he still gets on the ball in the middle of the pitch. Now, if you put Dujon Sterling in that position, and I'm sure he's able to get around the pitch more than Tom Lawrence, he's going to be able to probably win more duels. I think if Rangers are to have a chance of getting a result here, their midfield needs to be Sterling, Diomande and Barron, probably. That leaves the right-back question of Tavernier against Maeda. But how do you see that midfield battle in particular? Because it is the area where I think there's been a big gap over the last number of seasons.
That's the three for me, and I'd be surprised if that's not the three that the manager goes with. And as Johnny said, you can only imagine the social media outcry if that's not the three. There's not a lot of options in there. Also, Nico Raskin still working his way back from that injury that he sustained in pre-season. There's not another midfielder chaperone the door to say, I deserve to start in this Old Firm game. The fact that Sterling is fit is a bonus. I think Barron has been an impressive acquisition and has started the season well. Diomande, I know we all like as a player, could maybe do with a big, dominant, match-defining Old Firm game just to take that reputation on again, but I think he's more than capable of that. Clement doesn't really seem the type who will go out to nullify a team or nullify a player in that. He speaks about, he mentioned at his very first press conference, we were at this dominant style. It's more about what his team do rather than trying to nullify or take an edge off another. So I'd be surprised if he goes, as Johnny outlined, goes Sterling man for man on McGregor. I think it'll be that three, but it's how does that three operate against Celtic's three. Losing Matt O'Reilly is obviously a big blow for Celtic. That's definitely an advantage for Rangers. Yeah. But Celtic do still have quality options that can come in there. If you're going to win these games, think back again to the Gerrard ones. It feels like we're harking back to the glory days there, but that's because Rangers were good in those times. You look at the options that Gerrard had with Davis, with Kamara. But Ryan Jack in there, clearly defined roles, all three of them very good at those roles, and had Joe Rebo that can come in and do a job as well. Rangers, in very basic terms, they're short in quality. The three that I think should play on Sunday, I think they're all good. But are they as good as those three individually and collectively? Probably not. That's a level that Rangers have to try and get back to.
You look like you're about to make a point.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Chris, and I actually think that what Clement will do will be push Diamandi further forward.
Yeah.
My concern with Diamandi is I think he's a really, really big talent, and you can see what he brings to the table. You can see what he's got in his locker, but he's still, for me, raw. He's still, for me, tactically and disciplined at times.
I thought he was good in the cup final, no?
Yeah, no, that was his best game. And so if he replicates that form, you have no worries about him at all. I just don't think he's as naturally defensively switched on as he might need to be in this encounter. But, I may well be proved wrong. I suspect we're going to get the evidence because I think he'd be pushed up.
Yeah. Okay, if that is the midfield three, and it might be, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tom Lawrence in there, just because of what we've not really seen Clement make, as you're saying there, Chris, a defensive decision in that position. So I think that would probably be the wrong decision because of the reasons we've outlined. Presuming that is a midfield three, that leaves Tavernier up against Maeda. Tavernier has had the most speculation over his Rangers future in the 9 years that he's been at the club. This summer, there was a formal bid from Turkey for the player. Looks very much now, unless something dramatic happens between now and Saturday, they'll be staying. If so, it's going to be a very busy day for us tomorrow. How, Jonny, do you see that unfolding? Because I think if you look at, again, the last 3 years, there's been games, if you go back to Michael Beale's first Old Firm game, where Maeda kind of gets the better of Tavernier in the lead up to that opening goal after Morelos plays a ball across the face of the pitch. There's been games going back where he struggled against Maeda. There's been other games where I think he's done all right in that position, thinking more of the 2-1 Scottish Cup semi-final. There's been so many Old Firms that I might be quoting the wrong game there. But especially in those final 3 months of last season, Tavernier's legs compared to previous seasons did not look like they were there. He's never been a better defender than he has been an attacker. At times he's been criticised too harshly for me as a defender, but there's no getting away from the fact that he was really, I think, bad defensively in those games. Do you think that if that is the battle and the Rangers right, the Celtic left, that he can come out on top against an opponent who's given him so many difficulties?
I do, because I rate James Tavernier. I think he's a good player, and I totally agree with your assessment. One of the things that I would say regarding him is that he's been massively overplayed.
Yeah,
He's made himself available at a rate that so few Rangers players have over the last, since the Gerrard era. He's always there or thereabouts. He's suffered very few injuries. When there has been an injury to James Tavernier, they've missed him because what he delivers in terms of set plays, in terms of penalties, in terms of assists. And he's still doing that this season. I don't think he's the player that he was. I think he's lost a yard of pace. You can see that, I think, when he's going up against a particularly fast player like Maeda, who in the past, maybe 2-3 years ago, when Maeda first came in, I think Tavernier was dealing with him better than he was last year. There may well be a psychological element, and nobody will know that but the player himself. I think he's just got to focus on taking care of the threat in this game. I don't think he should be as buccaneering as he normally is, or as his natural inclination. And I think he's experienced enough at 32 now to know that that's the case. I don't get a sense that the summer period has had an effect on him. I think he'd be absolutely fine. If you came to us 3 months ago, I think we would have thought Tavernier would have left. There was a lot of interest. There was a lot of scuttlebutt. There was a lot, and it was probably more than scuttlebutt. We're hearing a lot of things about the potential for a move to Saudi in particular, but also European clubs. And we saw that there was interest, as you pointed out, from Turkey. But Tavernier has clearly wanted to stay, because if he'd wanted to leave, if he was desperate to leave, then I don't think there's any doubt that there was the interest there that could have taken him away. But from the moment he did that Rangers TV interview, that almost felt to me like a point of him saying, when they did the interview, right, I'm not going anywhere. I'm hanging around. He's obviously going to get his testimonial, but while there's been this clamour for a rebuild that I kind of mentioned, I think was correct. I still think James Tavernier can offer real positivity to this Rangers team, but he needs to deliver in these big moments. I talked about big players stepping up. there's times when he's done that in terms of goals in Old Firm games. You know, he's grabbed the game by the cudgels and brought Rangers back into these games with free kicks or penalties. And I would like to see, I think, a James Tavernier right at the top of his game psychologically for this one. And if he does that, then I think he can take care of this Maida threat, but it'll be very, very difficult.
I think in an ideal world, you would have more depth in the midfield and you'd rotate Sterling out to that position. As much as you need him in the middle of the pitch, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. But Chris, I put it to you on this overall point, as Johnny's just catalysed a thought for me there. Who's the last Rangers player in an Old Firm game to really grab it in an attacking sense? And this leads us on to talk, before we talk about Clement, to talk about who Rangers' key players are going to be, because we've spoken about Celtic a little bit, about the tactical battle. Who was the last player in an attacking sense, to really go and grab it? You're probably looking at Ryan Kent in the title winning season. And this is where I'm in real agreement with Johnny that Celtic, they've done the same thing for a number of seasons. You can see that it's familiar to them and how they play. And I think especially in these big games, they've had that confidence to go and carry it out time and time again. By contrast, Rangers have had no real settled rhythm in the midfields they've picked in the tactics that they've been using from manager to manager. So maybe if I don't ask you who the last player was, because we can't think of anyone apart from Kent or Roof, who could it be for Rangers? Dessers has started this season well. We don't know who it's going to be at number 10. I think Václav Černý still getting up to speed, but you saw his individual quality at points, because if Rangers are going to get a result, they're going to need that type of performance from someone, or that type of moment from someone that we've not seen over the past 3 seasons again.
I think Dessers is the obvious one that you're looking at, not just because he's the Rangers number 9 heading into an Old Firm game, but as you mentioned there, Josh, he's in better form. He's in a better place right now than he was coming into the club last season. Difficult summer for him, obviously making the move, being a wee bit behind in pre-season. The club was not in a good place, obviously, with the managerial situation last year. Things not going well. That clearly had an impact on him. Certainly picked up after Clement came in, finished the season, that second 2/3. The season was really good. Has started this season really well. He needs a moment. Now, Johnny spoke about moments earlier on. I think Dessers needs one. He was denied it in the Old Firm at Ibrox last year. That could have been it. We spoke for so many years about Morelos not scoring against Celtic. I think Dessers, he has and he will score against Celtic, but it's when does that next goal come? Is it going to be a consolation in a 2-1 defeat, or is it going to be a winner at Parkhead? They're both count as goals on your record, but one carries a very different connotation, a very different significance. So I think you're looking at him. I think Matondo plays off the left. I think Černý plays off the right. Černý has been very impressive so far. Gives Rangers something different on that right-hand side that they've not had for a number of seasons. You spoke about it last week about round holes and round pegs. That's definitely Černý on that right-hand side. A novel idea in football, I know, but that's something Rangers are benefiting from. Yeah. But you look at Dessers, there's no other option to play number 9. It's not going to be a Gaman. You can't put Danilo in. It's going to be Dessers. Can he provide that moment, and can he be, and we talk about old firm heroes, can he get a goal that's going to be remembered rather than one that just goes on his actual record?
You, Johnny, are not Dessers' biggest champion, having exchanged WhatsApps with you about him. Would an Old Firm goal change your mind? Where are you at on your Dessers journey at the moment?
So I would say that I have to be honest.
Yeah,
I've been impressed with him this season.
Yeah,
and I've slaughtered him. There's no doubt about that, because I just did not think Cyril Dessers is good enough to be Rangers number 9. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I've changed my mind completely on that. But what you have to say, a few things about Cyril Dessers is, number 1, mentality, outstanding. Because it wasn't just me. There's been so many people that have taken him to task and given him a hard time. And it was interesting to hear Clement talk about this. And he actually said in the press, I don't know if it was you that asked the question, Chris, but he said, he's actually aware of some of the criticisms that they were maybe right.
Yes.
And that he's gone and reflected on that. And I just see a player that's much sharper in terms of getting into the right positions and just looking a lot more dangerous than the guy that I saw last season. And I don't think so far this season he's having that thing where he misses 3 and then scores 1. I think he's been a lot more deadly. I don't know whether the facts back that up or not. It just feels like that.
I think his 3 league goals, I think he's slightly overperformed his chances. He slightly underperformed them last season. And I think that sometimes the narrative about him is blown out of contention. The one area I think, if you look at the Ross County game of the weekend, where I thought Dessers would have given Clement encouragement, was that Rangers, so often in Old Firm games as well, when you've had Dessers and Lawrence up top, the issue for Rangers in the system that they play, when the wingers get pushed back, how do you get up the pitch? Because Dessers isn't someone who's going to hold the ball like Morelos is the one who comes to mind. I actually thought that in that first half, when Matondo hit the bar, when Rangers had other moments, you're speaking about Rangers being good in transition. If they're going to be good in transition, they need Dessers to, even if he's not always holding up the ball, to get the ball at the pitch in some capacity. And I thought he looked better in that regard against Ross County the weekend. So we'll see. He could have a moment. Well, let's go through the team that we think it will be before we just briefly touch on Clement. Butland, Tavernier, probably Suter and Proper. Proper, you'd imagine, to come back in, and we've not really spoken about Proper, but him and Chef, they both look like good signings. I think Proper is someone who's going to be a more natural fit for Clement's style of play, because to match up Celtic, I think you need to be aggressive, and Rangers have had centre-backs who've wanted to go backwards rather than forwards against Celtic. But that's probably going to be our back four. Chefty's looked good going forward, Chris, but remains to be seen defensively how he's going to fare at Parkhead. Any qualms about that?
I thought the game that he played over in Berlin for the pre-season game, I had major fears over him defensively. I thought, this is a guy that's really exciting to watch going that way, but less so going that way. To be fair, since then he's also come in and played left back after Ridvan's been out. He's not really been tested properly defensively, with all respect to the teams he's been playing against. It's been easier for him to look good going forward. This will be his biggest test defensively, a big test for him mentality-wise as well. But I don't have any real. I think Ridvan, if he was fit, Ridvan would play. He's at present, he's still the first choice. But I don't have huge fears over Jeffy going in there on Sunday. And I say I can't disagree with the rest of the back four that you've picked out there.
He's going to be up against Kuhn, isn't he? Because they'll probably play Maida on the left and Kuhn on the right. And Kuhn's in terrific form. I think he's got 4 or 5 goals and assists already. So that's going to be a real challenge for him. But I have to say, I really, really like him.
Yeah.
I think
he's fun, isn't he? When was the last time you watched a Rangers player and you're like, they're actually really fun to watch?
He is. But he's got all the elements. And again, going back to what Clement said, he was like, he actually singled out the recruitment team and said, look, they've done a really, really good job in getting this player in. And you can see why he thinks that, because he's got pace, he's got physicality, and he's got power. These are the 3 things that Rangers have kind of seemed allergic to from a recruitment point of view over the last wee while. And I think he could have a horrible game on Sunday because he's that age, it's a big environment. I still think there's a lot there, and I still think he's going to be a good signing over the long term. This is the kind of guy that you can bring in, you can sharpen, and you can give experience to, and then sell on for big bucks, because the raw materials are there. And I just think he's going to be a really, really good signing. If you get Yilmaz back, you can push him further forward. I think you can play him in either of those areas, either left back or further forward in the left wing, and I think he's going to deliver something, especially against that kind of low block team. He's got skills, he's got pace, so he will be ideal for Rangers in that kind of environment. It's going to be a massive test on Sunday, but you shouldn't be basing his success as a signing at 20 years old on the basis this game. It's too early.
Yeah. You look where the first goal against Ross County comes from, taking the ball at left back and committing a man, and the catalyst of that up the pitch. But I agree. I think the one area in pre-season as well as that game where you looked at him against Amad Diallo, who's pretty good at football now, isn't he? But when he was playing against a left footer on the right, I think you've seen him struggle a little bit at points. So against Kuhn, who's a left footer on the right, remains to be seen how he fares. We know that we think we know what the midfield's going to be if we're picking the team. And just finally, Cherney, Dessers, discussed those two. Rabbi Matondo, who is on his redemption arc with 2 goals and 2 assists. He needs to do it more consistently before we have any serious conversation. But briefly, Chris, before we kind of close, we know he's got the potential to do something in an Old Firm game, presuming he does play there. We saw him do it last season in that 3-3 draw. There's going to be space for him to play into. Could happen. I think that's the stage where we're at with Matondo, whereby he needs to show up more consistently for us to go into a game and say, yeah, do you know what? That's definitely his position. You're guaranteed he's going to make an impact. But there is going to be the space, if he does play, for him to go and run at the Celtic defence in transition. And to your point earlier, Johnny, Rangers haven't had players to do that, and that is the one area I think Matondo looks as most dangerous in.
I think could rather than can or will probably sums up Rabbi Matondo. It's that if he turns up, if he does this, can he do that? rather than on the other side, you would back Tierney to go and perform, because we know even very early on in his Rangers career, you almost know what he can bring to the side. Matondo starts on Sunday, you've got no idea if he's going to be 8 out of 10 or hooked at half time for Ross McGosland. Both of those things, unfortunately, are very much on the agenda. I think it would be him that gets the nod, because Cortez is not going to be back fit enough for it. And even then, it would probably actually be a big call to put Cortez in, because we don't know how good he is heading into these type of games either. So it's a big opportunity for Matondo. I think it's safe to say he's had plenty of opportunities over his Rangers career. He's not going to get many more, but it's a great stage for him to go and perform. And I think actually quite a lot of the players that have been here the last couple of seasons, one big Old Firm performance, one big Old Firm win, one big Old Firm moment could help change the narrative and could get people back on side. It could actually give him a big boost as well. But now you mentioned that redemption arc. He's been on a few of these things already now, so I think he's running out of time to go and make an impact. Great opportunity for him on Sunday.
I'm a little bit more concerned about the left side of the team if you're looking at it from a tactical point of view, because I look at the right and I think a lot of focus is on the right because of Tavernier. But you've got Tavernier, Sterling and Tierney. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of defensive nous there in terms of what Sterling brings and dropping in. You look at the left side of the team, you're talking about Hefty, Matondo and Barron.
Yeah, true.
And I think Celtic are going to target that. And that could be an area of where there's problems, because you've got 3 inexperienced lads. They are, what's Matondo, like 23? He's not. I mean, he's played a lot of games in his career, but he's not the most defensively minded guy at the best of times. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Conor Barron, and it's going to be a huge thing for him, helping out Hefty and making sure that Matondo is dropping in and making that triumvirate as strong as it can be. Because I think Johnston and Kuhn are going to be doing a lot of dovetailing there, and it'll be Kuhn coming inside and creating havoc. That's going to leave a lot of space, because Hefty's going to be going across for Johnston. We know Johnston's a dangerous player, so for me, that's the one that people should be looking at more.
Yeah. Final word before we close up. We've not really spoken about Philippe Clement. Rangers are very committed to him. They know they need to break the cycle of sacking managers in the autumn. He's not won an Old Firm game yet. This would be a significant result. If he could get a result here, it would be significant for him. If he's to suffer another defeat, it's not going to be great. Big afternoon for him as well on Sunday.
I think we'll start the answer on a negative. If it was to go badly and it is a defeat, it's the manner of it. Now, is it the same players like Tom Lawrence we've spoken about? Is it the same players, same story, same system, same outcome, same mistakes from the same people? If that's the case, I think that raises big questions over the manager. If it's slightly different and it's a bit more encouraging, like I think the Scottish Cup final was, that was a better level of performance. As Johnny outlined earlier on, the moments went against Rangers and the game ultimately didn't go their way. But I think there was more to take from that one. If he builds on that one, even if it is a narrow defeat, he can maybe get away with it. You can perhaps talk your way out of it. If it's the same old story, I think it becomes very difficult for him. Ultimately, a Rangers manager that can't beat Celtic is no use as a Rangers manager, and you won't survive no matter how long your contract is. If you can't win these games and you can't win cups and titles, there's no point in you being here, regardless of how long you've got on your deal. So he needs a result. He needs a performance. Not it's a huge matter of urgency, but between this one and the Ibrox one, he's going to have to win one of them, because if you lose both of them, the title was gone after the January one. So if this one doesn't go to plan, he's then in not quite last chance saloon, but he leaves himself very, very little wiggle room heading into Ibrox one.
I totally agree with Chris. I totally agree with everything he said there. There's just a real politic at Rangers that you need to beat Celtic. You need to win games. And listen, I think it's safe to say that from within the corridors of power at Rangers, there is more backing for the manager than I think there's been for any manager since Gerrard, in terms of they really, really want to break the cycle. So I don't think that a bad performance would lead to a Clement exit. It would lead to a lot of uproar and upset. But I think there's a sense that Rangers have made mistakes in getting rid of managers before they should have, not given enough time to turn things round, becoming a club that's just always in change, always in crisis, and that they need to give this manager to the end of the season. But I say that, and we know the reality. We know the reality of Glasgow. we've been around this block too many times to say that there won't be a problem. And it's up to him to deal with that.
Yeah, we shall see. Listen, we're going to do more building up to the game tomorrow before kickoff. We'll be live on the Rangers review before and after as ever. Until then, thank you for joining us. Thank you to the MPH showroom here in Dunfermline for hosting us. Do come check it out if you're local or if you're coming from far, because it's pretty nice. Until then, we'll speak to you tomorrow morning. Thank you for joining us, and bye for now.